Welcome everybody to the March 2025 FM BetterForms Friday Live, our monthly meetup. Really excited this month. We have a couple of fun things. We're just a bit of a recap, some of my takeaways, and hopefully some of your takeaways from Claris Engage in Austin. We just had a team come back, and we have our feature today is going to be Justin from DebrisTech and the rest of the gang. I think saw in the room. They're going to be showing us one of the apps that they've built. So that's going to be pretty exciting, and I hope you enjoy everything there. We'll have our usual updates. Hassan's just going to talk about some small updates that we've added in the editor in the past little bit. Pearson's going to be here for UX Corner. He's going to do a little bit of a segment, and we'll touch base on Claris Engage stuff, and of course onto our feature. I want to tell you about a few events coming up because not everybody gets a chance to necessarily go to Claris Engage, but we have quite a few. Considering the size of the FileMaker community, I used to be really heavily involved in the PHP community, JavaScript communities as well. And when you start comparing the events, like JavaScript events, there's tons of them. But big events, like for frameworks, say like Vue, for example, which is a framework that in BetterForms, there's less of those. There's maybe 5 big ones throughout the course of the year. So we're pretty lucky, actually, in terms of our community. We just came back from Engage Austin. FM BetterForms and Delphs Engineering was a sponsor. We are also sponsoring Elevate FM, and Elevate FM is going to be a Toronto, Canadian conference. This is a great opportunity. It's really inexpensive. Plus, if you're from the States, you get really good bang for your buck in terms of exchange value as well there. And that's going to be May 26th and 27th. There's a training day on the 27th, and the 26th will be talks. Most of our team, I think pretty much all of our team will be there. So it's a great chance to come out. And if we have enough people from our FM BetterForms community, we'll have our own little sub training as well. So let us know if you're going to come to that. And if you are from Canada, come on out and sponsor that as well. Vienna Calling's coming up next in a couple months. That's going to be exciting. That's a continuation of the .fmp conference. .fmp originally started as a spin-off of the Pause on Air conference. It's kind of sort of a European version, and it became its own entity, and it really developed. There's a ton of camaraderie. It's not a .fmp was never a big sponsorship type thing. It was very grassroots and a really good technical meetup. Very casual. People just book stuff on the fly. Somebody would present, they go up to the board and they add their session and such. So that's pretty cool. Vienna Calling is going to be the same sort of idea. It's a little bit more structured, but from my understanding, the team that's putting it together is trying to keep the traditions alive there. So if you are going to that, and I know most of the Europeans on our call will probably be going there, so I'll see you all there. Let us know that you're going, and we'll bring you out some stuff as well. Finally, coming up in Greenville in September, I was talking to the 2 companies that are organizing this. This is put together by Kalos Consulting and Joe Scarpetta Group. And they have told me that they've really upped their game. They're going to be, last year, they had about 100 people or just under or so. This is a really business-oriented conference. It's not so much of a developer type thing. You're not going to go and find out, hey, I can use JSON element this way. You will, though, go out there and say, hey, I can talk to my clients this way. And I think for most of us who are either not in-house, but consultants or, in some type of role like that where you're dealing with clients and you want to grow your business, it's an awesome conference to go to. I highly recommend it. We got a ton of takeaways ourselves from that. I want to mention just something really quick, and I just saw Andrew jump in the room. Andrew's going to be leaving our team, so I'll turn the microphones off so we don't hear the sobbing. And I just wanted to sort of give him a special shout out. Andrew is, as you guys know, he's been phenomenal in terms of our support. He's built countless apps for ourselves and for clients. He's introduced a ton of features into BetterForms, things like rollback and some other automations and things like that, and debugging and such. And he's been a great pleasure to work with. So I hope everybody takes a second. Maybe you can direct message him and say thank you for all his help. All right, and we do wish him the best in the future. I'm going to flip things over to Hassan. He's going to talk about, I believe he's going to be talking about a couple quick updates, just some small things that we just introduced in terms of performance and such.
Yeah, morning everybody. I'll just be taking over the screen sharing here. Kind of want to go over some brief performance things that a lot of times in the background we are updating a lot of optimization and performance that you guys might not notice directly, but they'll be like, huh, I never got that bug again that you may have used to get. So one, for example, is you'll notice that there's loader states now when you're joining between from apps to environments. And another thing you'll notice is I don't get this loader state this time. My page instantly loaded. We optimized this page because before, if you did this really fast, you could time out since hooks were running on the wrong page. But we fixed that. An additional thing that we changed was when you hop into your page editor over here, this has also been affected by the performance. And it won't cause you to crash out if you hop in and hop out back and forth. So that was one of the major changes we did. Additionally, I want to show that on our examples over here, where people have been liking some examples. I encourage everyone to like some examples as well that you find useful. This way we can see what is helpful to our community. Lastly, as always, our bugs and fixes will be changed, well, not changed, but displayed on our changelog over here. So feel free to check this out. You can see what we've been kind of changing and working on. And I'll update what we did for March shortly as well. All right. Thank you, everyone.
There's also been one other update that we didn't mention. That's in our base code in our latest version, and that's related to some nuances with OAuth. So if you are using OAuth, some of those things could potentially benefit you. Those will be posted in the changelog in the next couple of days. Awesome. We're going to jump over to Pearson. Pearson's going to be speaking at Elevate FM. He's going to be presenting a talk on user testing, and he's going to give us a little bit of a taste of that today, just a few minutes. And so I hope you do come out to see him present.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, so like you said, I'll be presenting at that conference. I believe it's in May. Pretty excited for that, and so I want to make a kind of a continuation of my presentation from last month, which some of you might remember. But I'll make a quick recap of that. So let me just share my screen. Great. So what I talked about last month was usability testing and the importance of that. And so now I want to talk about more usability testing and how to actually get started. So last time I talked about some examples of it and why it's useful, but now I just want to talk about how to actually conduct a user study. So what we want to remember, quick recap, is just that it's not about opinions of the users, whether this looks nice or what color do you think this should be. We're really just looking at their behavior. How are they interacting with this? Is it usable? Are they getting confused? Is it frustrating for them? And it helps you avoid expensive reworks later on. We're doing this for the user, but also for ourselves, because we don't want to have to produce something, build it, spend all this time on it, release it, only to find out that there were some, you might say obvious issues that we would have noticed if we tested it. Maybe it makes sense to us, but it wouldn't have made sense to anybody else using this product. So this is just a fast, lightweight way to improve the user experience. I'm going to get into how it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. But yeah, we just want to make it fast and simple for ourselves to conduct these tests. So I want to talk about kind of these 6 steps to usability testing. And sorry, I'm just moving some things around my screen. We want to define our goals. We want to ask questions, or sorry, write questions and give tasks. We want to run a test pilot, recruit our users, conduct a study, and then analyze our results. So those are the 6 steps we want to take to conduct a proper user study and get some benefit out of it. And I'll go into more detail on each of those steps. So defining your goals. What do I want to learn from this test? What is the user behavior that I'm trying to observe? And what that means is ask yourself, why are we actually testing this? How large of a scale are we actually testing? Are we just looking at a specific workflow? Is this something that I've noticed could be, or maybe something that I have wondered, will this be easy to understand? Maybe it's a new feature that you're trying to experiment with. So asking yourself these questions and defining these goals is a really good way to make sure that you stay on track, that you're testing the right things, and that you have a goal in mind for what you want to get out of this. So let's say you started a new you created a new software and you're launching the new sign up workflow. Your goal might be to see if users can successfully create an account without getting stuck. Instead of saying, I want to see how they can use the entire software and every little piece. I want to know if they understand every page. That might be broken up into multiple tests, but focusing in on a goal in specific makes it easier for you to analyze the results afterwards as well. Writing questions and tasks. You want to make sure that what you're providing the user when you're testing is actionable, is realistic, and is neutral. And what that means is you want it to actually have you want to give the user a goal or something to do, and not just throw them in the deep water and see what happens. Some tests might be like that, but for the case of what I'm trying to uh, talk about right now, we want to give proper structured kind of leading tasks for them to complete some goals. Actionable items might be on a food delivery app, and you say um, uh, you're hungry and you're craving a burger. Try to order a burger for delivery, and you're not telling them click order now and order a burger, because you're already giving them the answer. You want to just give them a goal. Hey, if you are put in this situation and you want to achieve this thing, how would you proceed? And you want to give them that actionable item so then you can see what they're doing, see how they are doing it, maybe gain some insights about where their first reactions are to go. So that is a good, realistic, real scenario that you can put them in, and as neutral. You're not giving away the solution. Like I said, you don't want to say, click this thing and now do this. You want to try to lead them towards what you want, but putting that in a realistic scenario where they won't have you over their shoulder in when they go home and they try it for themselves. Next is to just run a test pilot. It helps you avoid confusing instructions, missing information, any roadblocks that you might have missed. And this is just, maybe asking a coworker or a colleague to do a quick dry run of this test. Make sure that you're not overlooking anything too obvious, because, like I said, what is obvious to us might not be obvious to the next person, or what's clear to us, like this task that I'm going to provide. Maybe it's super clear to me, but I've completely overlooked a uh, a step before what I'm about to ask this person. That gives a lot more context. So if I was to ask someone to test an app and I've completely forgotten to give them the context that makes this workflow make sense, running this by someone who has no skin in the game, that might be a really good way to test you're essentially testing the test to make sure that it makes sense. So that's a good third step before you actually get too far into this process. The next step is to find your respondents. So now that you've created your goals, you've set some tasks, you've run a test pilot, the test looks okay, they're, better than okay, it looks good, you're ready to send it to some people. Who are you going to test it with? You have to find these respondents. So these could actually be your real customers. They could be more colleagues and friends, depending on what the app you're testing is. You could be recruiting them from social media, like a LinkedIn post, or maybe you send out newsletters and you're asking for people to come test your software, people who are already familiar with it and have signed up for this newsletter. You could even make a direct pop-up widget on your software. So maybe after 2 hours of them using this software, you can ask them, hey, do you mind conducting this test? Maybe it's a survey, maybe it's contact us and we'll have a Zoom call or something. There's a lot of ways to find people. And the best part is you don't even need that many people. Just a handful of users can uncover a lot of really obvious usability problems. And the fifth step is to actually conduct the study. So you might try some moderated testing where you're present and you're guiding the user to ask follow-ups, or you're asking the follow-ups and guiding the user through it. It could be unmoderated testing where the user is completing their tasks on their own, and maybe you're having them follow a set of written instructions. And that's best for, or most commonly used for these remote type of studies, where if you are trying to test a lot of people at the same time and you can't be there in every situation, that would be the, probably your most successful or usable testing method. And you want to, as if you are moderating this testing, you want to watch them, see where they're hesitating, seeing what is confusing them, where are they making mistakes, and those are going to be kind of the main questions you're going to ask, and the data that you're looking for to see where in the workflow can you improve the user experience. So if you notice, let's say 3 out of 5 users who can't find a checkout button on a shopping app, that's really good that you've been able to identify it, because that's that's over half of the user testing population that can't find a pretty essential part of your software. So don't be afraid to find those problems, or for people to get stuck, because whenever people get stuck, especially if it's a recurring issue, that is where you're going to make the most progress in your testing. And finally, you want to analyze the results. You've created your test and you've actually had people run through it, and now you have a lot of data, and you want to try to figure out where exactly can you make your improvements. You're looking at quantitative insights like the success rate, the percent of users who actually completed your task, the time on task, how long did it take them to complete this, and how long should it take. Maybe you can find an average of people who have succeeded in this task. You can find the average of how long does it take. Maybe you notice that there are some outliers who are taking, maybe they still succeeded, but they took an extra long amount of time. You can look at why did it take them so long? They did find it, but what was getting in their way to find the right answer? There's something called a system usability score, and that's just a quick survey score for overall usability. It's similar to how at some restaurants or like airport bathrooms, they have that kiosk. You have the how was your experience question, and you give it a good, neutral, or bad. So something like that at the end of your study could be just some quick qualitative data to look at, or so quantitative. And qualitative insights would be looking at what frustrated them, what questions did they have as they were using your software. And that helps if you're present with them in a moderated testing situation where they're asking questions like, why can't I do this? And they're trying to click something and it's not interactive. Having them ask those questions is really good for you to understand their method of thinking and how you can improve and make it simpler for them. And finally, just some last thoughts and the takeaway is it doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple, stupid is one of the all-time quotes in any kind of business. You don't need a huge budget to do this. You don't need hundreds of participants. And all you need is a clear goal, some realistic tasks, and some users. And you can achieve a lot through something this simple. You're not going to get as granular information as if you're a Facebook or a YouTube or an Instagram who's conducting tests on thousands or millions of users at a time. But you're going to get a lot, if not all of the main observations or main obstructions from a user experience, and that's going to go a long way. I think the 80-20% rule might apply here, where you're going to find 80% of the you know what? Actually, I'm going off script. I don't know how to to connect that, but there's got to be an 80-20 rule in there somewhere. If we find 80% of the problems that overcomplicate the user experience by 20%, something in there I think would make sense. But yeah, anyway, that concludes my presentation on usability testing. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. But I hope you guys learned a little something about testing and how to conduct a useful test.
We got a lot of crickets today. To call an exterminator.
Everyone's settling in from coming back from Engage.
Yeah, everybody's half sleepy. That's it. Awesome.
Good
Thank you.
going, Pearson. Woo!
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, if we want to fill in a little more time, I can share something that that I actually just talked to Jordan about. And Jordan was the one who just gave me that props yesterday or just now. But yesterday I was testing something, or just trying to show Jordan. We're working on an app together, and I was just looking through a filtering system for this app, and so I was just building something, and I wanted to see. Filtering is so common. It's pretty easy to understand. You don't need a lot of context. So I'm staying with my girlfriend this week just as like a little sleepover week, just for fun. And so she was beside me, and I'm thinking, well, I'm about to talk to Jordan in about half an hour, so let me just do a quick test. So I showed her this app. All she needs to know is that we're in the context of a movie production or film production, and I just need you to filter these placeholder images. Can you do that? So I just gave her this prototype that I whipped up in Figma, and I said, how would you add a filter to this gallery? And so she saw there are a few icons. This is a familiar filter icon, so she clicked that. Now she has a lot of these tags, and I said, okay, so now from this list of tags, how would you filter down to scene 102 and the character named Eunice Sipes? And I did have to explain like this was a scene icon, but maybe that's something that I can take away. Maybe these icons aren't very clear, but just her asking her to filter down to those two items, she was able to correctly select one, select the other, and now she had two filters applied. And I asked her to close it. She was able to close it, no problem. And just something that simple. This was a usability test that took me maybe half hour to put together, and 5 minutes less than 5 minutes to walk through with my girlfriend. And it just gave me validation that at least this small feature was clear to somebody who is just like an average tech user, someone who has a phone and uses technology on a fairly daily basis. So that's just a very quick side note, kind of yeah, just example of how simple a user test can be. Back to you, Charles.
Awesome. Thank you, Pearson. Try to come out if you're in town or you're close by to Toronto in May, and we can see a little bit more. I want to just touch base on Claris Engage. I know there's going to be a ton of meetups. Every meetup in our community is going to be talking about Engage. So I'm only going to sort of touch base on, I'd like to get your feedbacks from the people who went. I know there's at least 3 or 4 of us here. And I'll tell you a couple of things that I got. I didn't go to any sessions, but I will tell you what I got out of it as well. We had a booth there. We were sponsors. We weren't the big sponsor, but we had representation there. And here's Hassan at doing a great job of demoing some stuff at one of the booths there. We had a few people from our team come down, so you had a chance to meet Hassan on the left, Linshue, Charles, myself, and Madalena. And it was really, really nice to kind of get out and meet everybody in our community. And of course other vendors and such as well. I'm not going to bore you too much with slideshow here. I just got maybe a handful of slides, so it's not going to be like digging out somebody's old wedding pictures or something here. We met Alexis Allen on the plane there, and this is really more of a plug to Elevate FM. The opening keynote was at a separate location, as some of you may know, than the main campus, and the location actually reminded me a lot of the Gaylord type style, where you have this big mezzanine type foyer area, or foyer, depending where you're from, area, and balconies overlooking and such. And it's a shame that I don't know, maybe the hotel wasn't big enough to have the entire event, but it seemed like that would be the perfect place to do the entire event there. Couple things, the opening ceremony and the the breakfast, and there we go. It actually reminded me of some other events, like Pearson and I just recently went to Config in San Francisco. It's a UX design conference put on by Figma. And this had that kind of feel, the same sort of bookstore music playing in the background, and the blue lights and everything. They definitely had the feel of a tech conference, which was kind of nice. I didn't really get that feeling as much last year, so I would say this as a keynote kind of was better. It seemed to me that the average person I talked to afterwards really felt good about the direction that Claris was going on. That's a huge feedback thing that we're here every year. It's like, oh, I don't know, and they're dropping the ball and they're screwing up. I honestly don't think so. I think I've been a sort of a defendant, I guess, but I think they've done a pretty good job of showing where they're headed. And the things in the direction that they're headed, I think is aligned with industry. One of the things that was different for us as a vendor there is we were on a separate floor. There's 5 floors, I think, to this building. This top floor was just for the exhibitors. In some ways it was kind of better, but in more ways it was kind of not. I prefer as a company and a vendor there. And I think if you're a participant, you get a chance to be exposed to the vendors. So you probably agree that it's better to be able to walk by the vendors all the time, because sometimes there's somebody at the booth and they're busy and you want to talk. Let's say you wanted to talk to Hassan here and he's talking to somebody else. You may not feel comfortable walking up, but if you're walking by a whole bunch of times, there's a lot more opportunity to talk to people that way. The biggest thing we got out of it as a company is just basically community presence and meeting our community. Just another angle of our booth there. You can tell that's a bathroom back in here. It's hard to find the bathrooms in the Apple building because there's no signs. There was a sign that they had a little kiosk they had to put out in front, but it's just kind of funny that there's like hardly any signs anywhere in the whole building.
Yeah, I had people asking me where the bathroom was, even though when we were standing right beside it, because people just couldn't tell.
Huh. Yeah, I think it's that way. Although it was a lot easier to find sessions, they had a lot better marking of the rooms and such. Just another angle of our booth. I'll tell you, I went to only one session. I wanted to go to a few more, but there was just one that I really wanted to see, and this was Clay's. Clay has been a key engineer at with Claris pretty much since the beginning, or almost since the beginning, from what I understand. And he talked about a few things. I'll just touch base on the stuff that I think our personal community can possibly benefit from it. Not just everybody else, but just like kind of BetterForms specific. He talked about 3 different things. He talked about this new upgrade or patch type tool. He talked about JSON edits and something else that I'll touch base in the slides here on as well. Mostly about this first one is a slide about improvements in JSON parsing. And he's, let me see if there's a better shot there. This is kind of a crummy picture, but you get the idea. And some of the changes that they made between version 21 and 22, and then the newest version, and how much faster it's going to be in terms of JSON parsing. And he talked a little bit about internally why it's going to be better. And the long story short is and this can apply to a whole bunch of things in FileMaker, is FileMaker is effectively a database. When you store the data, it's stored in potentially different formats, or it's handled, let's say, maybe that's better. It's handled in different formats. For example, you have this concept in programming called casting. Casting is when you assign assign something to a type of what it is. For example, it's a string, it's a number, it's a binary object, and so on. And FileMaker has this flexible kind of casting. And if you take something like $ name first, and then you say concatenate or and then another string, we know that the output result will be cast as a string. But if you say +1, like name first +1, if name first has a number in it, it'll suddenly become a number. So it changes. Well, there's other types of data types underneath the hood in FileMaker as well. And when you fetch something from a field, if you're fetching JSON from a field, so the JSON is stored in FileMaker as an actual, text, curly brace, and so on, that's text. FileMaker reads that in. It doesn't populate the other types of data structures yet, because until you actually touch it, because you may want to concatenate 2 pieces of text together, or it may turn into a number, and so on. So one of the things that he's saying is don't read and parse JSON from a text field. That's the long story short. So if you have JSON stored, a big blob of JSON, it's stored in a text field. Let's say it's a big array of something, and you want to read some data from that, and you have to make more than one read. So you want to read the first one and the third one. Instead of looping through and grabbing it from the field, that field at that point is text, and then you start to parse that JSON. So then FileMaker will convert it into a JSON object and then parse it from there. And instead, pull that into a variable. And I think we talk about this on the next slide here. Pull it into a variable. And by pulling it into a variable, FileMaker will augment that variable, that JSON text, and it'll add actual JSON to it. It'll parse it all out with their parsing engine, and then you'll do your calculations or your computations on that. So that was a big takeaway. I think for our style of coding, what we do at Dulce Engineering, we always do that. We never really usually touch the field. We'll assign it to a variable first. They have a new command, JSON parse. I guess that's already available, but it basically will pre-populate the cache for handling that. And there's one more slide that you can kind of get a bit better of an idea of what I'm talking about here. So this was kind of interesting. Here you're populating name 1, name 2, state 1, and state 2. And the worst case scenario is you're grabbing it right out of demo : the table field name, and I'm grabbing this out of name. It's interesting that he put name 1 and name 2, but he called name, so it's purely an example. So here you're grabbing it, so it's got to convert that into JSON, then parse it to get the get element, and then you're doing the same thing here, and then here and here. So it's 4 times. So you don't get any help from what he calls DB data, which is their structure system that's internal to variables. And you don't get any additional help from their internal caching that they've added in. The second version is better. It's a little bit different, but it's very, very subtly different. If you look at it, it's name state out of field 1, field 1, field 2, field 2. So you get a little bit of help from cache, but that cache doesn't kick around until into the next field. So that's why when you interleave these field calls, you end up with a degradation in performance when putting those in a row. So if you're doing something right away in your script and you have something like this, just by changing the order of the fields, you're going to get some gains. So that's kind of cool. And then the last one is help from grabbing JSON and converting it right away. So by assigning JSON parse into a variable, JSON parse is a function that will basically hydrate the internal cache in FileMaker. So it'll convert this thing and make it really quick to access. You pop that into this variable. That variable now, the type of variable, it's cast to a JSON object, right? So that's sort of kind of new. By casting these into JSON objects, the performance is much, much quicker. So now you can just grab them in any old order, but you're grabbing them out of here. So your performance is better. So at the end of the day, the takeaways that you want to do is don't reach stuff right directly out of fields, put it into variables first. And if you have a new enough thing where JSON parse is supported, then you're going to use that. I think I've done that somewhat a bit of justice, hopefully. The other thing he talked about that I thought was kind of interesting, and I've really been scraping my head for a real world use case of this, is this upgrade tool. So this is basically a tool that takes FileMaker catalogs, which is basically anything you can, not quite anything you can stick on a clipboard, but like anything that can be represented in XML. That's part of FileMaker's schema. So for example, a field, a table, an account, possibly a layout objects, and so on. Those are all can be copied onto the clipboard using something like base elements. And you can manipulate that and do whatever. But because it's a representation of data, that means that it can be used to patch things up. So you can basically, Clay went on to talk about these catalogs, which are these objects. And here's an example for an account one. So he talked about the UID and stuff, and everybody's, oh, this is really cool. But the real world use case is, when are you going to use this? Well, you would use this if you were going to build some kind of programmatic patching thing that would go into a file, look at a file, and make some changes. But the thing that kind of bites, in my opinion, is that you have to pull the file offline, right? The plugins kind of do this, but you don't have to pull the file offline. So if I have to pull the file offline to patch it, why am I not just, and maybe somebody can answer this, why am I not just using the data migration tool and fixing the entire file at that point, right? Because I could start with something, version A of a file, copy it, make my changes, and use the data migration to move back. So I guess the difference perhaps is that we're not migrating the data or something, but I don't really see a real world use case for us. That doesn't mean there isn't one, though. If you can programmatically patch this, and maybe they'll at some point make this more flexible, that means external systems like Claris Studio can actually augment and change some of the schema with it. So a lot of these changes, and there's one more I'm going to show you in a second, a lot of those were requested by Claris Connect and the Claris Studio teams, because that gives them a little bit more flexibility in terms of integrating with FileMaker. I'm just going to catch up on the JSON parse. JSON parse is a new function. I'm not sure when it's released, though. But you can take advantage of all of that stuff just by assigning the JSON from a field to a variable. It does the same thing, right? All right, this is kind of interesting. There's no direct gain, but I'll tell you why it's valuable. They did a bunch of low-level library updates, and this was kind of like chores. You call them in tasks, right? Stuff that you have to do. We periodically do this as well. BetterForms got maybe 20, 30 libraries that we depend on. Every now and then we update some of them. We don't do them like constantly because stuff is changing too quick. It's not practical. But this library he's pointing to right here, Antler, it is a parsing library, and they use that to parse the SQL. So when you're using execute SQL, In FileMaker, they parse that and converts that into tokens, and then they use that to build up these queries because it's not direct SQL internally. So they've updated it from 3 to 4. Now there's no there's some smaller things in there, but there's nothing like we're not going to get a new SQL instructions. It's not so much for that, but what that does is that gives us all the AI models are trained with modern versions of libraries, right? So that means that AI generated SQL is not going to be compatible here, but it will be compatible here, right? So that's kind of a hint of where things are going here and what you can do directly. When this is released, you can use AI to generate SQL now, but you're going to get the odd errors because of compatibility and syntax and a couple things like that, from what I understand. But in the future, and this is expected, these things are expected to be released in, I think they said early summer or summer. That means we can do things like AI-driven data queries. In the next quarter, we'll talk about some of the stuff that BetterForms is going to be doing to take advantage of that. I don't want to put it on here just yet, but it'll be quite significant in terms of how we can use that. You can use that already, though, for some type of AI interface. And the last one I thought that was kind of interesting, and this one is actually the best one. I didn't hear hardly anybody talking about it, and I think it's the most amazing thing, is OData is going to become more the standard. And that's not the amazing thing, because BetterForms can use the data API, the XML gateway, and we didn't bother integrating the OData interface in for a reason, because there's no advantage to us at the moment. Very subtle one in terms of overhead in terms of the stack, because you don't have to spin up a session when you're using OData. It's directly communicating with FileMaker, but I think when you run a script, you're going to be forced to do that anyway, so we don't get a huge gain there. But this fourth point here, webhook support for notifications. He wrote mainly for Studio. In other words, oops, sorry, all you FileMaker people, you're not going to use this. That's my impression he got from this. But what webhooks do is they give the database something that FileMaker doesn't have externally, which is called broadcasting. Broadcasting is when you make a change in the database, you can tell something else. I guess it's last year we got window transaction or on window transaction. That was the first time we could actually do at a low level. We could do broadcasting in FileMaker, but it does incur a bunch of scripts that run, and it's a little bit heavy depending on what you're doing in those scripts. But it's still, nonetheless, it's pretty good. You can run it from the server. So as soon as a record changes, we have this trigger. Then from that trigger, you can define what you want to do with this data. It'll tell you the mutation, what changed, table, and so on. And you decide how to handle that. We've built sync engines with that. We use that in our apps that are more real time, like a Visionary app where you have this like button and you can send messages. So we combine that broadcasting with the ability to work with an external system. So this is really, really big, because what this means now is you can take two FileMaker databases and you take this OData connection. Now remember, OData is pretty powerful, right? You can change schema with it. You can, of course, access all the tables, and it doesn't spin up a session like the other gateways do. And you can take two of these and you plug those into, say, a Lambda function, something that's like an ephemeral function of code, right? And now you can take, with AI, you can basically write a sync engine that will sync two systems in it with any business logic you want, right? And the webhook goes back into this Lambda and it says, hey, this changed, and this one, your AI generated sync code can do whatever interface with whatever you want it to do. And that solves a ton of connectivity challenges that are in FileMaker now, right? We're not running a script and doing an insert from URL. We're doing this webhook, and that means we can offload. And remember, this is hitting the FileMaker stack fairly low, so we can offload these calculations, which are computationally expensive. Anyhow, long story short, sync engines will change forever because of this. That's a really, really big thing. It also means that external tools like FM BetterForms can very easily integrate with live data without having to jump through some smaller hoops. And that's the main reason why they added that in there. They added it in from themselves, but we get to all use it. So I think that's pretty cool. It's a really big thing. You're not going to see the fruits of this probably for another year, but it tells me that they're thinking about these kinds of things. And I think that's really, really good. Value list support, Jan. Better container support, that's okay. Aggregate support, I guess, for some summary statements and things like that. Don't really care about most of the stuff. The one I really care about is the webhook. So I'm gonna play this. I don't know if I should play the whole thing. It's about 3 minutes. It's a Nelson, our marketing coordinator, put this together just this morning, and it is a video from the Claris museum that they had. I'll play it because I think we'll see. We'll see. If you guys start putting comments like ended early, then we'll do that. But I think it's kind of interesting. Some pretty cool stuff in there. Oops, sorry. Coming up to the biggest museum piece. I clipped it just a bit shorter, but that was Clay Mackel at the end there. And he's the guy who more or less wrote all of the code, I call it base code, of FileMaker itself, right? So he had a huge involvement there. Anyhow, we're going to be posting that on our social posts as well. I think that's pretty cool. So maybe we can open it up. I'd like to hear for the people who went, what were your takeaways? What were your thoughts and so on?
And from
Bob,
my own end, it was nice seeing the community, some of the people that I helped in general support, putting more names to faces, or faces to names. And yeah, kind of seeing what people built. Like we have DebrisTech coming on shortly. I hadn't even heard about them until we met them at Claris Engage, and it was pretty cool what they built with like very minimal support from us.
For sure. Bob, I see you're on the call. If you're free to talk, how did you find Engage?
Yeah. Hey, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you
Yeah,
hear me okay?
yeah, all
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. This was probably I can't even, I lost count, eighth or ninth, but this year, the way they laid it out, the sessions I attended were very helpful. Um, just, those little tips and tricks when you see somebody else's um, system and what they've built. And then yesterday, sitting through with Todd Geist in the API integrations. I've done a lot of integrations, and I feel that's a good tool in my belt. But to watch how someone else has put it together in the scripts and structuring it in different ways, it's so informative and helpful to see how the other members of the community are using these things and putting them together. So that was my takeaway.
Nice. Hopefully, I think I don't know how long it takes them to put all the videos out, but I know they will release all of that stuff. So that's why I didn't worry too much about the sessions. But I know some people that never bother to watch the videos, but there's so much good content out there. And honestly, even content that's years old, it doesn't really matter for some things, some high level concepts like, say, coding design patterns. Learning some of that stuff is quite useful. Some of the design patterns that were introduced in the FileMaker community, maybe not the best, but other ones are pretty good. So that brings us to our next our today's feature, and it's basically the team from DebrisTech. We had a chance, and just before, about 10 minutes or 3 minutes before this picture, Justin came up and says, "Hey, can we show you what we built?" And I'm thinking, okay, let's have a look, right? And honestly, we were blown away. We were blown away about how quick and rapidly they built this application. So I'd like to introduce Justin Whitfield and the rest of the gang. Sorry, gang, I didn't write your names down, so I apologize. But maybe you can introduce everybody, Justin. And he's going to talk a little bit about what the company does and what type of problems that they solve as a company and what they're using for software to solve those problems as well. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Justin.
Thanks, Charles. This is Garrett Sauls with me, and he can talk a little bit about what it is that we do.
Yeah, so I'm Garrett. Justin is our latest developer here at DebrisTech. He's been with us not even a year yet, but he's kind of become our BetterForms developer. We are an in-house team of 3 developers, and we actually have a consultant that's kind of been around since the beginning that's actually saw the email and hopped on the call, Bud Nail. He's on and listening. So I've been with DebrisTech for a little over 3 years now. Our other developer has been 4 to 5 years, and Justin almost a year. And so DebrisTech has been around since 2012, and that's when they started using FileMaker. Our owner, originally, he's kind of a self-taught developer. He learned FileMaker with the help of our consultant, and so they've been using it ever since then. We kind of have added on developer by developer and kind of built an in-house team, and so we kind of maintain what they originally built, as well as building new apps every single year and trying to just continuously expand. And so a little bit about DebrisTech. We are a debris monitoring firm, and so what we do is we monitor the debris removal after a federally declared disaster. So after a hurricane, tornado, fire, flood, if it's bad enough, if there's enough damage, a county or a state will have to hire a contractor to remove the debris, and then they'll also have to hire a debris monitor to monitor the removal of that. So what that does is the debris monitor will monitor it, put it in data format, Excel and PDF format, and then they'll send that data to FEMA, and then FEMA will reimburse the client, the county or whoever, and will reimburse them for their costs to remove the debris, as well as the cost to pay us to monitor it. So kind of like the tax auditors of the debris world. And we've been using FileMaker to do that since 2012. And so probably today, Hurricane Helene, most of you maybe know, this past year, it was one of the worst hurricane seasons we've had in a long time. We ramped up to about 70 project activations across the Southeast. So we work all over. We've worked in Puerto Rico in 2017 for Hurricane Maria. worked in Maui and Hawaii a few years ago for the Maui wildfire. But we had about 70 project activations from this past year that are still going. We actively have about 1,000 iPads out in the field that are still following trucks around monitoring the removal of that debris. And so we do a lot of intake of field data. And so we do a lot of reviewing of data and then ultimately a lot of reporting of that. And so a lot of what Justin started off using BetterForms as is to upgrade our dashboard and viewer experience. And so I have actually have a 10 o'clock that I have to head out for, but I'll let Justin take over and kind of show the product and the background of FileMaker involved in that. So.
Thank you. So originally we were using ArcGIS to build our dashboards, and it worked great, but part of the issue was for each time we had a new project, we created a new FileMaker database, and we'd also have to create a new ArcGIS dashboard for that project. And it wasn't as much a time-consuming thing because each one would only take 10 to 15 minutes to set up. But whenever Hurricane Helene hit, you know, we had a week and then 40 projects activated. And it worked out great because just around that time, I started rebuilding our dashboard in BetterForms. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. As soon as I see the button for it.
It's the green one, the share button.
There we go.
You know, it's funny. That's the biggest Zoom thing that I don't think they've ever tested, is that the buttons change depending on the width of the screen.
Okay. I have to quit and reopen Zoom to enable
All
it,
good.
so I will be right back.
Yeah, like as you resize your Zoom window, the order in which buttons disappear
Yeah,
doesn't exactly make sense.
no, not at all. You'd think always off the end or something, but they try to prioritize, I guess, which ones disappear, which is a bit annoying.
All right, let's see. Okay, can everyone see? Okay. So this is a dashboard that we built in BetterForms, and what's unique about it is anytime we would have a new project set up, this is just one web page that, depending on the URL that we pass to it, it points to a different data source, so we can display data from any of our projects with just this one page. So here we're displaying data from Rutherford County, and in addition to showing totals from our FileMaker database, we're displaying a map with points of where that debris was picked up, and it's interactive, so we can select an item. And this is all data directly from our FileMaker database, and we're showing an image of this tree being cut, where it is on the map. And so this was our first BetterForms endeavor.
Who
And
would this be used by, Justin? This particular page.
so this is what we give to our clients to track the progress of their debris. And in each FileMaker database, we have a home page on it that previously we would show our ArcGIS dashboard, but now we show this. So it kind of gives a better UI in the FileMaker experience because, you know, with all you can do in FileMaker, it does, at the end of the day, it looks like FileMaker when you have an application on it. And so really it's just for clients to get an overview of the project. And what this allowed us to do, having all the data collected in a central place, because we have over 70 active projects, and we never, even in ArcGIS, we never had a way, if we wanted to show, say, what are our debris totals for all of our Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene projects. And that's another thing that with BetterForms, we were allowed to do. So here you can see 27 million cubic yards we've monitored for Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And 3.6 today, and I'll refresh the page and those numbers will be a little bit different. Yeah, 22,000 today. We have 212 trucks active in the field, 17 bucket trucks. And then on this side list right here, these links actually take you to the individual projects. And if we have time, I'd like to get into how we do this on the FileMaker side to get all the data prepared for BetterForms. But if I click on one of these links, then it takes me to that dashboard. And so it's a easy way for clients. So for the state of North Carolina, we provide them a combined dashboard like this for only North Carolina projects. And it's really easy for them to go to each county and each city and see how's the debris removal process going there. And so this was our second big BetterForms project. And so we kind of started to be in a spot where, you know, we're building out these apps and we really needed a central place to view them all and to keep track of what all we've built. So that led into our third application that we call our hub application. So I'll go to that one now. So this is our hub, and you can see we've got links to other internal applications, and of these, the combined dashboard is the one I just showed. And then we also have a ticket review dashboard. This was also built in BetterForms. And this is used to track. So each time someone in the field fills out a ticket and submits it, we have to have someone on our end review that ticket and make sure that that data is correct and that ticket should exist. So you can see the review process for our ticket reviewers and keep track of which projects need more people reviewing tickets on them, which projects are good, which projects are behind on reports, and which projects need second level review, which is a developer review for the tickets. So then if we go back here, we have, so this is a list of all of our active projects. And another feature with our project dashboards that I did not show before. So this is only available when you're viewing a project from our hub application, but we also have a list view for project data for if a contractor wants to see, so if a prime contractor wants to see the removal of debris from a subcontractor, they can go here and they can filter by subcontractor, dump site, and then query our FileMaker database and get a return on that data. So let's see. And then but what's cool about this is previously, you know, you can do this part in FileMaker, have a view with totals, but what's special about it is we don't have to allow a contractor to connect to one of our databases to get this information now. And we don't have to worry about the number of concurrent users because BetterForms can handle any amount of concurrent users. And that's something that's special about it. So another cool page that we built. So in our FileMaker solution, we have a script step to scan for iBeacons. And so an iBeacon is a Bluetooth beacon that we place in all of our asset cases in the field. So we'll have cases that have the iPads in it that we use to run our FileMaker solution. And those beacons, anytime we do the iBeacon scan, we can get the name of that beacon, and then we have that mapped to a case. So that's how we track our inventory. And previously to BetterForms, we didn't have a way to visualize that data, but we've been able to create this interactive map to show and track our active iPads in the field. So this top number, active count, those are iPads that have opened one of our FileMaker applications in the last 3 days. And then this next card with the dump icon on it. So those are our active dump sites where we have a monitor in a tower taking pictures of trucks as they drive through, and then the total amount of cases we have. And so what's useful about this is, let's select a project here, Wheeler County. I'll do a different one. So we're still working to get those beacons in all of our cases to make this more useful. Here we go. So Avery County, they've used 66 iPads and they have a total of 6. So there's a case here, it doesn't have one of our beacons in it. But what's useful about this is we can see they have 39 monitors working, 11 supervisors, 7 operation managers. So we know, okay, they should be using that many iPads and they probably don't have any extra. But then if we select another project here, so this one, you can see there are 46 active iPads, but we know they have a total of 70. So they need to send some of those back so we don't have any shortages elsewhere. So it really helps with load balancing where our assets are divided up. And we can also filter by asset type. If we go back to our main map, we can see, so these are all of our star links that we have out in the field. We can view where they are, and then iPads. These are iPad cases, not the individual iPads, and our battery packs with portable chargers in it. Looks like we don't have too many of those out in the field right now. But this has really helped with the rapid growth we've had to balance where all of our assets are allocated and prevent shortages. So on to the next BetterForms application we've built. So being a government contractor, it's important that whenever we have employees working in the field, we need to be able to show what they've been doing. So each time they fill out a ticket, we have a FileMaker record with their name on it, but our database for tracking people's time is separate from our project databases. And, we might have over 70 active projects. So it can be hard in FileMaker to create a report or a view to show a timeline with this employee clocked in at this time, then they filled out a ticket here. And we were able to do that in BetterForms. So if we select one of these projects, we can see these days that we have data for. So, some of them say review, needs review. So what this is used for is our project managers go in and they keep track of, so if a monitor had no tickets, they'll give a reason to why. It could be, we had them handing out iPads or working on something else, and we don't have proof of what they were doing. So if we select this day, we pull all the employee data for that day, and then we can filter by the employee type. So here, our monitors, you can see this one clocked in at 6:41, did a load ticket at 8:41, another one, and then they were checked on by a supervisor. And then if we click here, we can see it in a timeline view. And so we're not really worried about whenever they have activity like this, because that's what we want to see. But if we scroll some, let's see if there are some that don't have any activity. We'll do a different day. Or we'll select a bigger project. Here we go. So this employee, he was clocked in for 10 hours and we have no proof of what he was doing that day. So we display this warning icon here. Employee had no tickets or check-ins. And so for this day to be marked as reviewed, a project manager would have to come in and enter a note for what that employee did, and then they could mark the day as reviewed. And that's allowed us to really cut back on the amount of employees we have that we don't have proof of what they're doing. And it's going to help us a lot in the future. If we ever get audited, we can prove, we really were working there. And one final thing we built. So there are a lot of, on the homepage, we're showing links to different applications, but those are sort of our main, things we use every day. We also wanted a way to keep track of other organization links that would be easy to share with each other and not necessarily we use every day. And we wanted something better than, sending all the links in a Teams chat. So on this page, we have these groups set up, and each group is an association of links. that you can configure and add icons for the links. And it just makes it easier to share these with other employees. And that is the sum of everything we've built. Oh, no, actually, there's one more thing. So I almost forgot, but so in the state of North Carolina, we have a call center set up in the back of our office. So in that call center, let me pull up our FileMaker solution. We're handling private property debris removal requests. So Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina pretty hard, and a lot of the debris removal process, there's a lot of private property damage, and we have to handle incoming requests to get them processed and make sure we have documents proving they own the property and they approve for removal companies to come in and clean up that debris. So here, someone would call into our call center in the back, and you see we've had over 490 requests. This one's is a test one, but so they call in and we take in their information, their email, and then their parcel number. And using that parcel number, we have a server set up where we pull an image of that parcel with it highlighted orange. You can see it here. And then we generate a URL.
Oh, cool.
And so when we open this, this is our BetterForms page for private property debris removal. And what's special about this, so in BetterForms, it's really easy to just get a page set up with some questions on it and submit those answers back to FileMaker. So in FileMaker, we actually have records for each one of these questions, and they're associated by project ID. And so each one is, so it's a parent question, and then there are sub questions for each one. So you'll see that on this web page, whenever I click yes on some of these, more questions will pop up below it. So here is, so I click yes here. You can see these more questions pop up, and that's dynamic in FileMaker. We have, let's see, property info. So it's a dynamic web form built from data from FileMaker, displayed in a way that we can easily share it and have people fill this out without connecting to our FileMaker database. And
Cool.
that's been very useful for us. And we've been able to help over 400 people get their debris removed. So I think it's pretty special. And that is all I have to share. Thank
That
you.
was pretty cool. Pretty cool. I made a whole list of questions, but let's open it up for everybody else here first. Could you first touch base on a couple of things? So you got about 3 or 4 apps there, really. Like some of them are smaller, like the smart link to that last thing, and some of them are a lot bigger. I noticed there's a lot of charting or a lot of maps and stuff in there. Is that all ArcGIS, or is that some of that like some other mapping library?
So all of the maps that I've shown, we're using the ArcGIS API, and for displaying the points on the map, like in our debris maps. So ArcGIS is very popular with other municipalities and cities, and they expect us to be able to provide data for them in ArcGIS. So we already are posting our data there for all of our debris projects. And it's all, yes, the ArcGIS JavaScript API is how we're displaying it. And we have our data posted there from FileMaker, and we're displaying that layer on the map.
Is it a big integration? Is it like hard to integrate with them, would you say?
No, it's actually very easy. And once you have your account set up on ArcGIS, in 1 or 2 prompts, you can have a working map. And AI is very good at the ArcGIS JavaScript library, and it's very easy to work with. There's a lot of examples out there on it.
Did you have to, is there a lot of configuration on the ArcGIS side, like internally for layers and all that stuff, or did you have to jump through much there, or not really?
No, Not really. Essentially, when you post data to an ArcGIS, so you create an ArcGIS layer, and then when you post
Mhm.
data to it, you're essentially just posting a latitude and a longitude field along with your other data. And that's all that's needed to create that point map you see on
Right.
there. And there is a little bit of initial setup for that and getting everything set up on the FileMaker side to post the data in a scheduled script. But once you have that done, it's a very simple integration. You never really have to worry about um, when you open a new project, you already have everything done. You just have to switch out some variables, and it's very easy to post more data there.
Your UI seems pretty consistent. Did you do that? Who did your UI? Oh,
I did the UI, and you notice some things look more consistent than others, like the ticket review page looked a little bit different than others, but I've tried to stay pretty consistent with it. And kind of as we've started to get more and more into it, I've kind of started to get a format for what I like and what we're used to seeing in our applications. And I think it's really important to just keep going and keep building until you get something you start to like and that everyone you work with agrees, this works for us. And
Mhm.
it may look like this right now and it may look completely different in 2 weeks. It changes pretty rapidly.
Are you ever
Yeah.
designing your stuff for mobile or like I think iPads you mentioned that people are using? Is it adjusted for those screen sizes as well?
Yeah, so the only BetterForms application we have that's designed for mobile first is our web form, because we wanted that to be as easy as possible for people calling in to open their phone and fill out that form. None of our other applications we really designed with mobile in mind, just because it's meant to be a desktop experience for those. But in the future, we do have some other apps we plan to build out in BetterForms for mobile first design. Like we have a FileMaker receipt app we use to track internal expenses on the company cards, and we plan to build that out in BetterForms and have it as a portable web app to make it
Nice.
easier to use.
So that web form, with the smart link, you're basically passing JSON schema and just dynamically adding it into the page.
Yes, that's exactly what we're
Yeah.
doing. So
Yeah.
whenever you notice in the link for the web page, there was a primary key,
Yeah.
and that primary key was associated with that form that we filled out during the phone call. And so from there, with that project ID, we pull those questions that I was showing in the FileMaker database. We pull those questions and we format it in a JSON schema. So it's an array of questions. And then to display it on the
Mhm.
page, we're essentially just doing a v-for loop with some formatting.
Yeah.
And that's how we're able to dynamically display all that. And I didn't demo the feature of hitting next without all questions being filled out, but it was pretty easy to set it up and have validation where if a field's empty, we show an asterisk next to it, and it's a pretty intuitive form.
That's pretty cool. It's neat to see that. We don't have a ton of users who are using that ability, but that's something that we put into the framework right from day one, is that dynamic ability. So you can use actually a calculation right in the schema and just point it right to the array, and you're done. Really, really simple that way. You can also put other elements in there. So effectively, you can build BetterForms inside of BetterForms is what I'm getting at. So you can do other things like put in summary blocks or titles or headers or any HTML element, and they'll all just dynamically render right within your page as well. So I know we have a client who does a city building permit approval app, and they use a dynamic section, and it fits right in with the rest of the app, and then they can customize it to each of their databases. Justin, you mentioned that you connect to multiple databases on the back end, and I believe you told me at the show this week about how you have one database sitting in front. Could you touch base a little bit on the overall architecture between your FileMaker servers and how you're connecting?
Yes, I would love to. I'm going to share my screen again. Now, so in this situation, we have 78 of these projects we're connected to. So our databases can have multiple hundreds of thousands of records for ticket data in them, and they're pretty complex with all the different relationships. And it can be pretty slow to use summary fields in FileMaker to get our totals. And that was a pretty big hurdle to jump through, but the solution that we landed on is we have this central database called DT Stats that has scheduled scripts to hit every active database we have listed. So on this page here, these are all the databases that we're regularly hitting. And whenever we open a new project, it's as simple as adding the database name to this list. And from there, we pull information from our time tracking database so we know which server that database is sitting on. And from there, we can build the API URL to get the record information. So you see a few other fields on here, and none of them are directly related to the dashboards. But then if we go to the projects layout here, so this is where all the calculations happen. And normally it's a lot less efficient to do your calculations on the FileMaker side, and it works much better to send it just directly to BetterForms. But in our situation with having, hundreds of thousands of records, we can't send that much data over. And as a result, we have this database with scheduled scripts. So you notice these fields here: formatted debris records, raw debris records, formatted tree records, raw tree records. So every 15 minutes, we have a script that runs and pulls the most recent records by modification timestamp from these project databases, and it puts that information in the raw debris records fields. So from there, we're using the Monkey Bread FileMaker plugin for their JavaScript functionality, because so this was actually prior to the JSON parsing improvements that FileMaker made. So maybe this isn't needed anymore. We haven't tested it out yet. But we use Monkey Bread because they allow you to run JavaScript natively in FileMaker on server-side scripts. And using that, we create formatted debris records, which is every information from every ticket in that database in JSON string keyed by the ticket number. So whenever there are changes to that ticket, it's easy to that JSON object is already indexed, so it's easy to modify that information. So at that point in the script, we have a field with all the ticket data for that project. And from there, we use more Monkey Bread JavaScript to parse that data and calculate our totals. And to give a little comparison, originally we had a script running that was trying to iterate through the JSON in FileMaker without JavaScript and total up everything. And for a project with around 50,000 records, that would take 4 to 5 minutes to total up that JSON. Whereas whenever we use the Monkey Bread JavaScript functionality, it takes about 2 to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I assume it's spinning up their JavaScript engine. But as a result, you see data here. This is the information that's passed to BetterForms whenever your a page is visited with a URL parameter that points to a database. So this is the information that's returned. And part of on the map, you notice there were outlines for the counties that were being displayed right here. So we're actually passing raw data to create this outline from our FileMaker database, because we have to have it stored there for whenever tickets are being filled out. We have to check their location and make sure they're in a valid area that debris is being picked up from. So we pass that information in what's called GeoJSON format. That's essentially a structured format that allows you to draw shapes on a map and determine outer shapes and inner shapes. And you can see here, it's a surprising amount of data that we're sending in one request. But since it's just raw JSON data and it's less than a megabyte, it's still very quick to load this page.
Nice.
But that is our FileMaker side of the dashboard solution.
You mentioned that the aggregator database, it talks to other ones. So those aren't on the same physical server. What you alluded to, you said it has the server location.
Yeah. So we have 3 FileMaker servers for all our databases, just to distribute the load across them. And one server we primarily use for internal applications like our time tracking and receipt tracking and applications like that. And so in our time tracking app, whenever we add a database to record the time for that project, because we bill by time. So in there, we already have the database the server that database is located on, and that's what we're hitting whenever we add a record to the list of projects to hit.
How are you
Here.
talking between the servers? What mechanism?
So we use purely the data API right now for
Okay.
cross communication, just because it's easier than adding these databases as sources, because then each time we create a new project, we would have to add a new data source to the file, and it's a lot easier to keep up with when you just create dynamic URL.
Yeah, and it can work across servers. So yeah,
which we do plan on switching to the data OData recently, because we learned about the benefits of that at the conference this past week, but we haven't not started that migration yet, but we're looking forward to it.
How long did it take you? Sorry, you've is it Garrett just mentioned that you've been just with the company for a short period of time?
Yeah, so I've been with the company for about 10 months, and of that 10 months, the last 4 or 5 been working on BetterForms applications. And so for the timeline that it took to build out, let's say, the dashboard from start to finish, I would say we spent about maybe a week and a half. And most of that time was just determining the best architecture for getting these totals, because it's a pretty, we have a pretty complex operation going on with all these different databases, and some of them aren't as efficient as they possibly could be. And there were a lot of workarounds we had to do to get there. But as far as the UI and charts, it was very easy to build.
What charting libraries are you using there?
This is Chart.js.
Chart.js, okay. Was there any decision like were you going to use, say, Google Charts, Apex Charts, Chart.js, whatever,
So I've used Apex Charts as well on our cumulative dashboard, but I just used Chart.js because I was more familiar with it, and I've used it used it in college a little bit.
Yeah, why not, right? So does anybody have any questions for Justin? This month we're low. The interactivity is low.
Well,
But I
Justin,
think sometimes it's a good sign. Sorry, go ahead.
One question, maybe, Justin. You say in a couple of weeks or 1.5 weeks, you have this dashboard and everything there. So I'm pretty surprised actually I'm pretty devastated by some of the work we do, and it takes us a month. But I will talk to the team. Thank you very much. How much work of FileMaker was in there for you? I mean, I guess there was a whole bunch of FileMaker already for you there, and you just did the front end, or did you also interact, or did you build out on the back end FileMaker?
So the majority of the time for building this was in FileMaker, and it may have been 2 weeks, not 1 week, but it was just difficult to, we tried multiple different things first. And for displaying information on the map, first I was trying to send batches of ticket information and create the points on the map, because originally I wasn't using data that was already sent to ArcGIS to display it. And that was one of the big hurdles that we went through, was getting the points on the map. And then for the totals there, so for your question of how much of it was in FileMaker of that time, I would say about 80% of the time for developing this was spent on the FileMaker side, getting data and connecting to the different databases and getting a format that would be scalable for all of our projects. I would say the vast majority of the time was in FileMaker. And AI was very useful in the development of this and building the UI. And I did have some prior web experience, but I lean pretty heavily on AI, and you can too.
Hi, Justin. My understanding of the ArcGIS license is that in order to put a map on a web page that does not require an ArcGIS login, the map has to be public. Is that right?
Yeah, so we pay for ArcGIS and we also have our own ArcGIS server running, but everything I've displayed is in ArcGIS Online, and we do pay for it. As far as displaying a map and data on there, there's a free tier. I don't know what the limits of, because we actually post data to ArcGIS, and with data posted there, so there is an API validation you can do. You can create an API key and give it access to certain layers. So you don't necessarily have to have those layers as public to display them. But it does make it a whole lot easier if they are public, because then you don't have to worry about API validation. And they do allow a good bit on their free tier. But I haven't ran into any issues as far as displaying data and incurring any billing expenses.
Okay. I thought if it was a private map that the web user actually had to authenticate through OAuth with an actual.
They
Yeah.
do, unless your API key is performing the authentication.
Okay.
Did you look at any other geographic providers? Like,
Yeah, we looked
maybe a
into
mapping company?
OpenStreetMaps. We
Mhm.
looked into OpenStreetMaps some, but you know, and with OpenStreetMaps, you can display ArcGIS layers on there, but we're already using ArcGIS for, so much for organization. It just seemed like the logical choice to use
Right.
it for this too.
For Jason, for you, I know you have an app that uses ArcGIS. Was there your client already had the license? Because it's pretty expensive generally, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, all their staff are licensed.
right. So then that's why you may as well go on that route as well.
Well, I put a map on an online tool with FM BetterForms for the municipalities, which don't. Well, I mean, they might, but they don't. It's not associated with the permitting organization. Um, and I I thought that it was not allowed to put information from a private map up there. So what I was doing was I was actually using JavaScript to put one point at a time down for one of the maps for the municipalities to show uh, where building permits have been issued in their area, rather than pulling that from the private map. Maybe I have to look into it again.
Yeah, and you might have to double check me on that, because the layers we displayed are public, but I believe that we have displayed private layers on the maps, just authenticating with in the ArcGIS organization, you can create an API key and give access to different layers on there. But yeah, you might need to double check me on that.
Okay.
Hey, I'm curious. I'm not sure if Charles has asked this, but how did you find BetterForms?
I've enjoyed it. Coming from a web background, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also a few things that are simplified for you. And already having a background in web development, there was a little bit of an adjustment, since, I'm used to opening a code editor and directly modifying all my files. So BetterForms does a lot of simplification for you in that aspect. And there was a little bit of an adjustment to those simplifications, but now that I'm used to it, I do find that it is quicker to develop an application in BetterForms than if you were to create your own web app and use the data API and pull the right information. It's definitely quicker.
Our team will probably reach out to you if it's okay at some point in the future, Justin, to get more feedback. And we're always looking for, how can we improve experience and so on. So that is awesome. It's pretty I think I'm kind of speaking for the team here, but we saw your app at Engage, and it's like, wow, do you see that? It's very neat when we're sort of stuck in the weeds working on something, and then we get a chance to see all these different things that the community has built. Like Jeroen's got this project management. He was on, I think, around November or something like that last year, and it's a beautiful app that does all of these things. And then we've seen other Navicue's been on numerous times, and see all these amazing apps. But sometimes we don't have any idea of what somebody's building, right? Because they just never, the odd time you'll see a screenshot and support or something like that, and that's it. So it's so thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've thoroughly enjoyed using your platform, and we look forward to all the cool things all the new features y'all are gonna add in the future. We're looking forward to it.
Definitely some really cool stuff. Some of it I can talk about, but some of it it's so brand new that we're just gonna start the engineering. So it's but we're very, very excited about the next quarters.
Thank you.
All right, we kind of already had a bit of question and answer, but if we can open that up to anything else as well, anything related to FileMaker or anything else anybody wants to share, we have a bit of time. If not, what we'll do is we'll just keep going on, and we'll jump to
Yeah,
our
I
draw.
have something
Yeah, go for it,
mentioned,
man.
Charles.
Yeah.
I just came across a weird thing in my database that I had to clean up. So it's a null character 0. Maybe other people have had this happen to them, where somebody copied and pasted an email address into a field, and at the end of it was a null character. And when you went and did anything with that field, if you were trying to copy a bunch of email addresses from a bunch of different records, as soon as it hit that null character, it's considered end of file, and so it wouldn't copy any email addresses from any records subsequent to that one record. So it was a weird thing. So now I've had to build a custom function that has to trap for this null character. As soon as, basically, I'm using an auto enter calc that if somebody enters an email address into this field, it cleans out this null character. And you can't even search for use the character function and look for character 0 in it, because if you do substitute character 0, FileMaker, when it uses character 0, it can't substitute for it because it can't find it because it's a null character. So you actually have to use the what's the code? There's a custom function called character 0 in Brian Dunning's site, but it's using not the encryption function. Just a second. I just
So you had to null it out of the fields.
Yeah, so you have to search for, let me just look for it. 1 second, I'll tell you, in case anybody's come across this.
Just seems like that
You
would
have
be
to use
a common
base64 decode. You have to use this base64 decode function. You have to create a custom function for base64 decode. I'm just going to drop it in the chat.
How come? I'm surprised we would have heard like this would be a real common thing, because generally speaking, that crop character injection kind of thing is not generally too much of a problem, is it? Really? I know like the 6699s for quotes and stuff like that sometimes with things, especially when it comes to code. It's interesting anyway. Where are they copying this from?
You know what? So they're entering customer data, and so we onboarded a whole group of childcare centers. So they would have probably gotten a spreadsheet of email addresses, but they still would have had to enter them one by one. So they would have copied them from either from a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, a web page, a PDF. I don't know where they got these email addresses from. It was basically one group of centers. There were about 13 different childcare centers that had this null character at the end of their email address. So I just want to make people aware, when funky things are happening, copy the text out, throw it into like BBEdit or a text editor, show invisibles, and if you see an upside down backwards question mark, that's a null character.
Cool. We'll jump onto our draw here. We gave I don't know, we gave a 50, 100 t-shirts out last week, so it's probably going to be the same stuff for most people, but we'll go for it anyway. The rule is you have to be here. And Alex, are you in the call? Let's check here. Don't see him in here, right? If not, all right. It's okay. Alex I just saw him yesterday. Is Dan in the call? Any Dans? One, twice. You know, the difference between the number that's on the wheel and the number in the call is not that much, but it seems to be there's some kind of there you go. All right. What we'll do, Justin, is I think you already got it. You got a shirt from last, so we'll wait till we get some new stuff in, and we'll put you on the list. Okay.
Sounds good.
A different item.
Thanks for the shirt, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. Awesome. All right. Well, that concludes the official portion. We're going to kick around. Usually kick around for chit chat and whatever afterwards. Thank you again. It was such a great pleasure to meet everybody last week, or this week, I should say. And we'll see you next month.